So that was nice and easy. I think next we're going to move on to the questions that we had submitted in from you guys kind of in advance. Yeah, and I think I might throw in a few extra questions in there if that's okay with the panelists. There's some that kind of things that have piqued my interest from hearing you speak. So sorry, there's going to be a bit more than maybe what you're expecting, but I'm sure you'll be more than able to handle those. I'm gonna turn straight back to Joseph for the first set. So there's somebody who submitted a question regarding studying accounting at A level, and I'm going to kind of throw it all into one question, but, you know, do you have to, I think you've kind of given from your own experiences, but, you know, do you have to study accounting at A level at university, and, you know, does it boost your chances versus studying something else? And, you know, what else can you study that will still lead you back to, you know, where you are? And, you know.
Yeah, I would say at A level, not so much, because at least A level is to sort of like give you a working understanding of how accounting works. And if you do decide to study accounting at A level and you continue with that at uni, it just means you won't struggle in uni, because in uni the first year of accounting is basically bringing everyone up to speed. Because you have people who started something completely different. So you might find it boring doing accounting at A level, or you might find it easy because it means you're going to whiz through that module. But the first year of accounting is basically bringing everyone up to speed. And as far as in uni, I would say yes. It's not the conventional way, because I do work with people who studied psychology and something completely different. So it's more about like how quickly you can learn and adapt. But as far as professional qualifications and studying for the professional qualification, if you've done something accounting or finance related in uni, it grants you exemptions. So for the exam board that I'm currently under, there's 15 exams that you have to sit over a period of 3 to 5 years, I'd say. And the other accounting board has got 13 exams. So if you study accounting in uni or finance in uni, it gives you exemptions towards a set number of exams during your professional exams. So which means instead of sitting the 15 exams, having to sit only 9, because I've got 6 exemptions for studying something finance or accounting related in uni. So yeah, if you're considering it seriously, I would say picking something that has finance or accounting related in uni would be very helpful in speeding you the process along when going into a professional account qualification.
Thank you very much. I've just actually come with a question for you. So Joseph, you kind of mentioned professional exams. Could you potentially clarify what that is? I'm sure back when you were 14, 15, you know, you might have thought going to uni studying accountant, then you're an accountant. Is there more? What more is there to it? Yeah.
Okay, so basically your degree, let's say I graduated with a degree in economics and finance. That means, but I work for an accounting firm. An accounting firm means they're chartered accountants, so they have final say on company accounts and the profits and how companies run their operations. So you're basically looked at as the trusted guy. If I say this is X, your word sort of like carries the weight. And so to be able to do that, you have to sit these exams that I've just mentioned to qualify as a chartered accountant. So at the moment, I'm just a normal accountant working towards being a chartered accountant. So which means once I'm a chartered accountant, I can sign company accounts for all the clients I work on, but obviously with the more responsibility and the higher I go up in my firm, that's when I start doing that. But it means I start managing my own clients. So it's sort of like you're given a chunk of the business to manage on your own once you're a chartered accountant. So the qualification is so you can go out and just sign off on companies. I don't know if that explains. I don't know if that explains it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Right, then we're going to move to Aaron, back to you. Could you maybe give us an explanation as to exactly what your role is? What is operations? And, I guess you mentioned that you're currently working within the finance investment insurance industry. Where else can operate? Is it only applicable there, or can it take you elsewhere?
From what I know, operations can be versatile in finance, in law. Or finance is very broad as it is, so you can have investment banking, accounting, insurance, M&A, risk management. So there's definitely a lot of places where you can take it to, because every company or every work sector has to have some sort of basis where all the internal affairs are running properly, as well as monitoring the external affairs. So that's where the operations team comes in. And in terms of what I do specifically, I manage all the transactions within the deals, making sure that all the legislations are followed, because there's a lot of laws and stuff when two businesses are coming together. Actually, for me to explain, it's probably best to know what mergers and acquisitions are. So within this part of the industry, we are brokers between two businesses that may be coming together. So let's say Sainsbury's and Argos, for example, if they wanted to buy property off one another, the estimated transaction value will probably be over about 100 million. So to commit to a transaction that big, there has to be a lot of laws, regulations, and a whole load of processing that has to be involved within this deal to make sure that there's no money laundering, no fraud, everything's good and whatnot. And if there is something faulty, we won't be prosecuted for it. It will be between them two. So that's where the claims will come in, hence why we're considered to be in the insurance section instead of the risk management. And intern operations manage a lot of the internal affairs, as well as some of the, we may reach out to clients, especially at the end of the deal. So we'll tell them, right, this is where the deal is. Now we have to do X, Y, and Z to make sure that everything is complete and you're happy. That's the main summary of it. If I get technical, it does get hard to explain. Like even some of the people I work with have been there for 5 years, they still struggle to explain what it is we actually do to a full degree. So hopefully I tried my best, and hopefully it gives you some sort of understanding. But yeah, I'll make a note of it and I'll send it out if you do want my email. So hopefully with written version, it should be easy to understand as well.
Nandi, okay, I'm going to move back to you. So question that we had for you, I think yours is probably the easiest to understand. I think we have a better understanding of what a doctor is, right? So that's always a good start. And, when it comes to medicine, it's quite notorious for, being quite a challenging job and very long hours. Could you maybe give us a flavor or insight to what your personal experiences have been like in terms of, how long your hours been, what's the working environment like, what do you actually do as well, actually on a day-to-day, doctor is one thing, but are you a GP, are you a surgeon, are you something in between, yeah, what's your job like?
Yeah, so I'm not gonna lie to you, I didn't know till I got here either, so don't worry guys, this is unlike the other sort of pathways, once I graduated I was a doctor. You still have professional licensing exams and things that you do as you carry on to specialize. So to become a GP or a special type of surgeon or a cardiologist, a heart doctor, whatever, there's further exams that you have to sit. But right now with my degree, I'm like a practicing clinician. So I work in the hospital. In terms of shift patterns, so what happens for the first couple of years of being a doctor is you work in sort of 4-month blocks. And so for 4 months, I'm stationed on a certain ward or in a certain department, and then I move. So last rotation, I was working in oncology, so in cancer. The shifts there were nicer, but the work was harder because unfortunately working on a cancer ward means that we're watching a lot of people die and we're helping a lot of people die. So there's a lot of academic stuff to do, but there's also a lot of psychological stuff to prepare yourselves for. You don't have to start preparing yourselves for that now, because how do you? But it's just something to think about, is that this job takes up a lot of your mental space, not just in terms of the stuff and the science you need to carry, but also sort of, you know, Sandy started this with a prayer, and I think that's very apt in being, you know, Jesus's witness in a place where people are going through some of the worst moments of their life. The workload, there isn't a way around it. The workload is a lot. So in the previous job, it was essentially 9 to 5, which was lovely, except I started at 8:30 and I often finished at 6:30 because you can't always leave. There are occasionally 7-day weeks, so weeks where you work from Sunday through to the next Sunday, rotated, not out of choice, obviously. But I've left that rotation now, and now I'm working in surgery, so I'm in vascular surgery. And we currently have a very mixed rota. So this coming week, I'm working a series of long days, which is 12-hour shifts back to back for 4 days. It's my first Christmas as a doctor, and I am working Christmas Day, a long shift, and I'm working the Christmas weekend as well. So I have a few days off before Christmas to celebrate Christmas. But that's another thing to consider, is you lose holidays because, as we discovered, hospitals don't close on Christmas. Devastating. So yeah, the hours are long. It's rewarding when you're there, but there isn't a way around it. The hours are quite taxing. And in terms of a day-to-day, what do you do? So I'm very junior. I've been a doctor for 5 months now, or coming up to 5 months. And so a lot of what we do is what we call skills on the ward. So when patients need their blood taking, when they need to be reassessed if they're getting very sick, or just examined because they look quite poorly, that's sort of my job. I'm the first doctor they see on the ward and the first person to sort of try and manage them on a ward basis. As you progress in your career, as you specialize, you then become more specific. So vascular surgery, where I'm working now, they do lots of stuff to do with bypassing. So if your artery becomes blocked up, and they're the guys that do the surgery that unblocks it or creates a bypass around it. So the more senior colleagues of mine spend about 20 minutes on the ward per day, and they spend the rest of their time in theatre operating. So it's very variable depending on where you are. It's quite a long journey to where those guys are. So for me, from where I am now to where I want to be, which is an obstetrician gynecologist, so a surgeon just in women's health, so helping women give birth and looking after women's health. From where I am now to being a consultant, so spending my days in theatre, is about 8 years. So it's a bit of a trek. It's a lot of exams. It's a lot of hours. But I'm smiling. So clearly, it's not all awful. But yeah, the day-to-day at the very beginning is lots of just examining, being around patients, helping nurses to make sure patients are well enough to go for their operation or to go home. And then as you progress, it becomes more specialist and more interesting and more complicated as you go forward. So yeah, that's what day-to-day looks like.
Thank you very much. I'm sure nobody envies you having to work on Christmas Day, but I hope you have at least an easy or nice and enjoyable shift. You mentioned something there actually that I wanted to pick up on. You mentioned specializing, you know, as far as we're aware, you apply to become a doctor and become a doctor. What is specializing? How do you pick what you want to do? When do you pick what you want to do? Am I not just a doctor and that's it, you know?
Yeah, so thinking about specializing, some people know from medical school what they want to do. So people will arrive at medical school and know. That can be helpful, but they're often not right. I arrived at medical school certain that I wanted to be like a neurosurgeon of some description. Turns out I hated neuro. It was really hard. It was really complicated. Success rate was very low, and I was like, I don't want this. So the decision to specialize happens sort of through your journey through med school. You get exposed to certain types of doctors, certain types of wards, certain types of patients, and you sort of discover something that you enjoy or something that you're quite good at. I think a lot of people didn't realize they enjoyed something until they realized they were quite good at it. Specializing happens after your first 2 years of being a doctor. So for this year and next year, I'm a foundation doctor. I have no specialism. I have interests. So I have interests in medical education, I have interests in medical research, and I have interests in women's health. And so you can pursue those as extra projects on the side, but you don't specialize until after your first 2 years. At that point, you apply, and then you start to sit exams, essentially. So if you want to be a surgeon, which is the path I'm taking, there's a separate set of exams. If you want to be a hospital doctor who isn't a surgeon, there's a separate set of exams. And if you want to be a GP, there's a different other set of exams that you sit at that point. Yeah, the decision is made in many different ways. I think it's nice to know what you might want to do when you start med school. Chances are you'll finish med school and you'll have changed your mind completely, because there are so many specialities that nobody really knows about. And that's the beauty of it. So it feels like you are a doctor and that's it, but actually there are so many options once you're there, that my being a doctor and my best friends being a doctor is actually completely different things in terms of who we want to work with and what our work-life schedule will be and what our career plans will be. So specialization happens a little bit later. You're a doctor for a while before you become any kind of specialist.
Cool, thank you very much. That was very helpful. To the few questions that I had, I think actually are quite general, so hopefully you should all be able to pitch in a little bit on this. I'm going to start with Aaron. Various ways of getting into your field. I guess you've mentioned that your route was through the school leaver and then apprenticeship route. Are there other ways of getting into where you are, and how might someone do that?
Yeah, sure. So one of the ways, and the most conventional ways, would be to go to university, and then during your either first year or third year, you can get experience. So either 6 months or 1 year. So I know some people in our work office right now are on 6-month internship, and that's one good way to get into the finance industry, because as well as qualification, they do look at experience a lot to see if you're competent enough to do the job. Because once they hire you, it's not really them giving you an opportunity in some cases, it's more of them investing in you. So they do expect you to provide results while working with them. So you have to show that you're the right person for the job. So that is one of the ways. And another way to do it would be the way I went. So looking for internships straight after GCSEs, and from GCSEs to A-levels, whenever you have free time, work experience, go to these meetups. Networking is a really good way to get in touch with the finance industry, because you can meet people and they can provide opportunities which may or may not be open to everyone else. So that's how I managed to get my interview, because someone linked me to a manager who was looking for someone to hire at the time. So networking is a really good way, and if you start young, then it shows your passion, it shows your drive, and you basically have an advantage because you know where to look at a young age. So that is another good way. And a third good way would be to apply for apprenticeships. So once you've completed your A-levels, I know there's level 4 apprenticeships, level 6 apprenticeships, and degree apprenticeships. So all of these levels vary. They're all good, but they all vary in terms of what they provide while you're working there. So some will provide financial qualifications. So if you go to PwC, for example, they will pay for your qualifications throughout the ACCA or ACA, one of the two. And while you work, you'll be studying on the side, and they provide you with tutors, and everything will be paid for. So that's one good thing. Or it could be a degree apprenticeship. So EY, they pay for everything throughout the entire session, throughout the entire apprenticeship, sorry. And keep in mind, once you've got the role, don't think that because of once the apprenticeship's over, they fire you. That entire process is an investment. They want you to stay because they believe in you. That's why they gave it a role in the first place. So it's very secure, and probably one of the best things to do, because if you think about it, once you're 24, if you start at 18, once you're 24, which is the average age to graduate, you will already have a qualification plus 3-4 years experience, which not many people will be able to say they have at a young age. So it's quite a good thing to get into. There's probably other various ways. So I know someone who's working Goldman Sachs, and he said he entered through the back doors. And if you're able to guess what that means, then he basically managed to network his way in, meeting one person, impressing them, meeting another person, impressing them, up until the point where he managed to get into the same contacts as the manager, and now he's a successful analyst working in Goldman Sachs, which is very competitive. So there's definitely a variety of ways to get into the finance industry. You just need to find a way that suits yourself, and obviously ask questions. Anyone that has the results that you want, always ask them and see if you can do the same thing, and that would definitely help you.
Thank you very much. So loads of useful pieces of information there. So thank you, Aaron. That was great. I'm going to move on to Joseph. I think Aaron overlaps quite a lot with what you said, what he said with regards to your career. But if there's anything maybe that you want to add into different ways to get into where you are, that would be helpful. If there's nothing additional, that's fine too.
Yeah, to be honest, you said most of it. So I'll just say, for most of the top 10 accountancy firms, for young people, we tend to do spring open weeks, where we take students who just finished their A-levels or first year in uni to spend time in the offices. And I know someone might think, oh, I don't have to think about that, but that's very useful because what HR do, they retain information. So when it comes to time to go on placement or to look for internships, they usually offer those internships to people who already have connection to the firm, because they've retained the information and they've spent a week in the offices, and so they'll know where to start, which is what, and the moment you go on placement, certain places are certain. I work with a few friends who went on placement and they already got their full-time offer to come back when they graduate. So they start you in the process of sitting your professional exams while it's your placement year, so that when you come back, you move on to the professional, which works out better for you because you spend less time sitting exams and more time actually working. So I would say to just keep it, if you have an interest in finance, just look for the companies you'd like to work for. Finance is around us everywhere, everything we do basically. So just keep a lookout for the companies you would want to work in, and like I said, my details are there. If you want to ask me something or how to proceed, I'll be more than happy to help to let you know how to do these places. And the only other thing I'd say, yeah, to be honest, Aaron's covered most of it, but I'll just say make use of the open days that the companies make.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And then last but not least, Nandi. I'm sure the traditional route is known to go to university, study biology, chemistry at A-level, university, then become a doctor. Are there really alternative ways? Maybe if you realize a bit later that you want to be a doctor, can you still go back and do that?
Yeah. So, I mean, to start with the traditional route, something that a lot of people might not be aware of is GCSEs matter. So there are some medical schools in which your GCSE grades are part of your application process. So if you know early on, and if you have a sense of it early on, think about it at that point. It's not essential. Not all med schools care, but some of the best ones do. And the best ones, I just mean the more famous ones, because med schools kind of end up ranking the same. If, however, you've finished your A-levels and you haven't studied the subjects required for medicine, the subject required for medicine is chemistry. They like you to have biology, but the subject you need is chemistry. Take a look at some unis, they vary. I ended up doing biology, chemistry, maths, and physics, but that was just to be certain. But if you do chemistry, they like it. If you haven't done chemistry, if you've done some other degrees and you feel certain about medicine, loads of medical schools take postgraduate entry. So you might have to do another degree first, whether it be related to medicine or not. Quite often you can get in. So biomedical sciences, medical sciences, or a pharmacology degree, those things can be really helpful. And there are some universities that offer gateway courses or foundation courses. So if you haven't got the grades quite right to go into medicine, or you haven't got the grades when you finished your first degree to go straight in for medicine, you can attend a uni that has a foundation degree. So my med school, Holyoke Med School, has a gateway year. So it's an extra year beforehand to sort of try to bring you up to level, especially if you haven't studied all the sciences, for example. And then you can start the medicine degree after that. Some unis do it where you apply for the gateway year and then you have to reapply for medical school at that point, which is a little bit difficult, but can be helpful. Medical schools have open days. They don't use them like they do in finance, like what Joe was saying. If you can attend, do. It gives you a sense of the school, but it doesn't impact on your application that much. Something important to add is there are a lot of groups or societies that help people apply. I'm involved at the moment in being a mentor for someone who's applying for medical school. Seek those things out. Much like the other two have said, there are lots of other ways of accessing their jobs and their opportunities. In medicine, there is only one way, but that one way has many ways of coming to it, if that makes sense. Doing your personal statement and all of those things on your own isn't always the most helpful. Sometimes it's really good to have somebody who's on the other side of it who can say, oh, this is what a really good personal statement looks like, or this is what really good experience looks like. Here is how to prepare for a medical school interview. Let me help you and let me support you in that. And there are lots of societies and groups that are doing that. You can email me, like the guy said, and I can signpost you to them, or I can just help you myself. It's just about having someone to guide you through, because it can be a bit, a bit of a tedious process, but it's never too late. A previous degree is always helpful. The subjects you studied are important, but there is always a way around it. So if you feel called to it, because I think medicine is one of those places you feel called to, because it's not glamorous, there is always a way. So please feel free to get in touch and I can see if I can signpost.
Perfect. That's super helpful. Thank you very much. Next question, I will come straight back at you, Nandi, actually. Diversity, that was one of the concerns that we had amidst this pre-submit question. How diverse is your field? Are you the only woman there? Are you the only person of color? Like, is it a concern for you maybe when you were applying to university or even in the working environment?
Yeah, so unfortunately, medicine is diverse in that a lot of people apply. However, our treatment once we're in medical school and in jobs isn't actually equivalent to our counterparts. So there's lots of studies, lots of research, lots of data that proves that Black doctors get punished worse than white doctors for similar mistakes. Black doctors are less likely to get consultancy jobs in comparison to their white counterparts, despite equivalent qualifications. Black doctors fail more exams. Black students fail more exams. We don't know why yet. There are some hints and signs about our cultural norms and how we don't make eye contact with elders, but eye contact is really important to pass exams and how a lot of us fail that. But unfortunately, the system isn't always for us. That's not to discourage you from applying. It's just the reality of the environment that you'll be going into. And so seeking out and finding and making friends with people who are similar to you when you are at med school, if possible, is really encouraging, because you can have people on side. Obviously, this past year, we've had the lockdown and there was a whole Black Lives Matter movement, and a lot of med schools have been held to account for the struggles that students have been having as their students, as Black students within their schools. So, as ever in any field, we're waiting and hoping and praying for change to come. But that's not to discourage you from applying. I think these issues lie in many fields and in many areas, and we need more young Black doctors within medicine, or young Black medical students, in order to enact the change. In terms of women, actually currently there's more women in medicine than men, or more female medical students applying. So, you know, we have that one down. Keep going, girls. But we must power ahead with being Black in medicine. There are, again, lots of the societies that support people with applying are specifically towards Black and minority ethnic groups. All the ones that I volunteer with and all the ones that I help with are specifically for Black students. So there is support there. There are people there who want to help, reach out, and they do. But diversity isn't ideal as a Black student in medical school, unfortunately. I don't know if maybe Joe, you could come in and speak a little bit about what diversity is like in your field.
Oh yeah, sorry. I think, to be honest, in my field, it's pretty diverse, but it depends on the firms that you work at and the level of position that you're at. Like at the level I am at the moment, I'm only like 3 years into my career, so everyone's still at the level playing field, and because it's basically everyone who got taken as part of the graduate program, so you have a mix of like everyone from different backgrounds, but we start to filter out at around this time, and from this point going forward, where you start getting more responsibility, we're still a bit represented in these positions where someone's an assistant manager or someone gets to the manager level, director level, which is because a lot of people tend to qualify and leave audit, which is why audit has a high turnaround, because everyone qualifies and they go into corporate finance, mergers and acquisitions, something different, or they take jobs in the industry to work for these companies that we currently have as clients. So a lot of the people tend to sort of like filter out, but even in these positions where people go out into the industry, you would note that there's not many people of color, and it's always nice for me when I go to a client and they've got someone of color who's like a financial controller or a COO, because we're dealing with listed clients, people on the stock exchange, so there's not much diversity. Everyone looks the same as far as the positions for the jobs that I could potentially do. So it's important to get more people into this role and to stay the course, to try and advance upwards as well, because it means more representation. I know Aaron spoke about the back doors in the sense of like, but this is what allows these people to have some other options other than going the conventional way. Same way when it comes of age, you guys, when it comes the time to apply, I might be in a different position, and instead of you guys having to go through the rigorous application process, I could arrange for an internship easily. We frown upon it, but it works. But it's also nice to go the conventional way and have all the information you need, knowing what you need to do to be successful. So yeah, representation still matters, but we need to do our part as well by like trying to get into these spaces.
Perfect. Thank you for those two. I don't know if Aaron, are you still with us?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, same thing. What's your experience been like then in terms of diversity?
Straight. I'm not the only colored person, but I am the only black person in my office. So that's just straight to the point. And it's one of the things you notice, but not one of the things that you pay attention to. Mainly in my case, my team are all good. I love my team. So, you know, when I go to work, I enjoy being there because I have good people around me. But that's not to say that, you know, there is a, how can I put it? A lack of representation, basically. However, due to the protests and whatnot, our firm have decided to look at themselves and see how they can help people in our situation, people who are black and maybe struggling. So they have signed up to different outlets where they can reach out to Black interns, Black people applying for internships. They're trying to reconfigure their employment because they'd only hire from like Oxford, Cambridge, any top university you can think of. And it's obvious to see that with the top universities, especially in finance, you won't see many Black people compared to our counterparts. And it's not like it's a competition or anything, but it's nice to know that everyone's like the level is becoming more and more balanced, even if it's still not completely equal, but it's slowly improving, and hopefully we can get to a stage where we won't have to think about these things as much as we do now or had to have done in the past.
Right, thank you very much. So the last question was one regarding interviews and what the interview process was like for you. What advice you'd give to somebody if they were to be in a position to interview for where you are. What's required and what's the process like, and what should you and should you not say. Start back with you, Nandi.
Okay, yeah. So medical school interviews are they're just a lot. I just feel like I've come here and I said everything's a lot, but you can do it because I did. Trust me. Medical school interviews take a couple of formats. So there's a panel interview where it's you and a panel of people asking you questions. That can be 2, that can be 3, that can be 4. It's various. They tend to ask you specific questions, things like, why do you want to study medicine? What do you think makes you qualified? Give us an example of leadership, or give us an example of you showing commitment to something, and those kinds of questions. It can be a multiple mini interview. So what happens in that is you have like a circuit of interviews. So you have 8 stations. A lot of medical schools are shifting towards that. So in those stations, you'll have a place where they ask you some questions, sometimes a place where they ask you to read a paper or read some kind of research and then ask you to talk about that piece of research. They ask you a few questions about it. You can also have practical tasks. So in one of my stations, they had an actor who pretended to be deaf, and they just asked me to interact with this patient or this man. It was really funny because the bell for me to move to the next station happened when I'd put one of his socks on and I hadn't put the other one on, and I didn't really know what to do. But that's the kind of thing that they can ask you to do in those stations. They can be sort of like acuity or thinking stations. So it's, so it's super, super variable, but it's multiple mini. The one thing that so again, I reiterate, find a mentor, find somebody to help you with this, because I didn't do it by myself. I could not have done it by myself. Some people do it by themselves, but why set yourself up for that? If you know someone, reach out. But the one thing I will say, if you don't get an opportunity to speak to anyone, if you don't have a chance to talk to anyone about it before you apply, do not ever say that you want to help people when you go to a medical school interview. I know it feels like the right answer, but it's not, because everybody wants to. So you need to stand out a little bit. But that's the one thing I can give you now that's 100% certain. Don't put it in your personal statement either, because they don't like it, because everyone says it. But please seek help, because this kind of stuff takes an army. But yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. I think everyone will take that away with them. Don't say you want to help people. Yeah, I think we'll all remember that. Thank you. Then Joseph, finally, yeah. So what advice would you give someone to kind of interviewing for where you are right now?
Okay. Basically, if at the internship level, it's very easy because they're not judging you on the same merits that they judge at the graduate level. So if you get in at the internship level, it's just basically sending in your CV. It just shows that you're proactive and you have interest to learn. So we usually just do on a first come, first serve basis for internships, in the sense of like during this busy period as well, if students can take some time out of uni to intern, it makes our lives easier as well, because they can do some stuff that we don't have to do, and stuff that they can learn really quickly. So at the intern level, it's just your CV and your interest in the field, because we're basically going to teach you what you're going to be doing. But at the graduate level, it gets a bit more complicated because it gets competitive. So you go through your different rounds of like the online tests made for the literacy and numeracy, and if you get scores above the average that we're looking for, then you move on to the probably video interview, where it's just the human resources getting to know you and how you are. Then if you're successful past that, and the video interviews are usually just conversations about why you've chosen this route and how your skills may apply to what we do. Because I know everyone thinks accounting is all numbers and all boring, but there is a bit more to the role and a lot of client engagement. So you could be good at numbers and you could be not so good at communicating. That may affect you, because as much as you're good at numbers, you still need the ability to be able to communicate with people and tell them the issues that you found. So, and after the video stage, usually the assessment center of just getting together with other applicants, like which is basically other graduates, and just doing tasks together, and obviously how well you do in those tasks. That's when you get the offer after that. So it's like a 3-round interview at the graduate level, that you three levels at the graduate level, then an offer. But I'd advise to make use of the internships or placements if you're looking to go into accounting. And my details are there. I'll give Sandy my phone number as well, so she can make it available to everyone in case you have any more questions or would like to know more about how to do an internship.
Other question that we had was, what is the most difficult part of your job? I'm going to jump to Nandi first.
Okay. As I said at the beginning, I'm an academic foundation doctor, which means that I'm currently doing research alongside doing my job. Time management, I think, has been quite difficult, because I thought I was finished uni, but I'm actually doing an extra qualification now post-uni. Whilst doing my job, which has been quite difficult. I think from an academic front, that's been something that's been quite tough. And as I said before, unfortunately, lots of people get really, really well in hospitals and we send them home and it's beautiful, but actually often quite a few people die. And I think starting the job and coming from, the hopes of healing everyone, and then getting to work and the reality being that actually for the last 4 months, or most of the last 4 months, my job really was to identify that someone was dying and to make the decision to allow them to die with dignity. So to stop causing pain where there wasn't pain. So making decisions like that, it was just the sudden change from being a student who kind of showed up on the ward and took some bloods and then went back to have lunch and carried on with her life, to actually being somebody who was making decisions about lives. Obviously, with lots of senior support, I don't do anything by myself, speaking to families, speaking to patients, but actually having instances where decisions like that were my decision to make, that's been quite difficult, suddenly realizing how much authority you can hold very quickly. But yeah, that's been tough.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm sure, not many people envy that position, but by the grace of God, you do it on a daily basis. So thank you. Joseph, what about you? What is the most difficult part of your job?
I would say it's similar to Nandi in the sense of like time management is very important, because for us, most of our work happens towards the year end, be it because companies have to pay their tax by the 31st of December, which means at the moment it's the busiest period for us, and at the start of the year, because companies that have December year ends, and that's mostly all the companies on the stock market, the Sainsbury's, the Tesco's, the Barclays, all these big companies have 31 December year ends, and they need to report by law within 3 months. But then it's quite difficult to gain comfort on these millions, hundreds of millions that they make. So it means a lot of time. So between January and March for us, we're not allowed to take annual leave just because of how busy it is at work. And because of the sensitivity of the information that we hold. If a Barclays makes a profit, their share price sort of like suffers. So to make sure that everything is as it is, we have to work longer hours between that time. So time management is very efficient because we've got lots of clients, and when you're working with energy clients, different types of clients, and making sure you move on from one job without leaving anything outstanding and you're moving on to the other, it gets quite demanding. So, but then the perks of it is like, we might get a nice summer party to just thank us for our efforts, which is a way of, it's nice considering everything that's happened during the busy season. But obviously with the pandemic and everything that's going on at the moment, it's just been busy with no break, and working from home as well. At the moment, I'd say would be another difficult thing, because I realize the amount of work I'd get done when I'm on client side and how the ease of getting information is much quicker if I'm in the boardroom or the conference room and I can just walk to who I need. But now I'm having to be on Microsoft Teams with the client or sending emails to say, can you send me this information? So it's sort of like, it ends up being difficult because you only have so much time to do the job. So time management ends up being a very useful thing to be able to have